Good evening.
So yesterday I joined a panel at Providence St. Peter Hospital giving interfaith discussion about practices around the bedside for people who are dying. And it included a Muslim practitioner. He was not an imam. And a rabbi, and a man from a Lakota man from Native American, representing Native American spirituality, and I was there, so there were the four of us. And so we engaged in discussions about death and belief about death, and so today I go through my email, and I have so many emails about people who are really dealing with the feeling that our country is dying, and it's not the country they are used to living in, and how do they cope with it, and so forth and so on. And I was thinking about a talk that I gave a few years ago. I don't remember how many years ago. But it was wisdom from a taxi driver in Berkeley. Maybe some of you remember it, I don't know. But this taxi driver pointed out that when we are born, we enter the world crying, and everybody else is laughing. We're just so happy somebody's coming into the world, and the baby's ah! And then when we are dying, we are laughing at death, and everybody else is crying. So, I thought that was just a very remarkable, wonderful piece of wisdom that this taxi driver gave. But he went on further, and he said that, he says, we believe that our body belongs to us, and it is our job to take care of the body, but we don't know really when we'll be born or when we will die, because our breath belongs to God. I was very taken by that in the taxi. And I was on my way to visit a friend, Rob, who was dying. And so the issue of breath was very prominent for me in my thoughts about what I was going to see when I visited Rob. So I thought about this very much, and about we don't particularly entertain the notion of God, and the talk was not about proving God's existence or not existence, but as far as Buddha nature is concerned, or the great being, or the great universe in which we all dwell, we share this air that does not belong to us. Somehow this inspiration and expiration goes on as long as we are alive. And so there's this continual connection with the Absolute, if we pay attention to it, of course, to the great mystery of Buddha nature, the great allness, the great universal connection. So in the talk that I gave before, I went to Dogen Zenji to explore this further and find out whether there was anything in Dogen Zenji's teaching about this. And so I found something from Hanyatara. Hanyatara was Buddhadharma's teacher. We find out in our research that Hanyatara was a woman. And so, most interesting, she is chanted along with the patriarchs, but most people thought that, she, as we come down into modern times, that Hanyatara was a man, but we know Hanyatara was a woman, and so, so Dogen Zenji, he writes, the venerable Hanyatara of Eastern India was once invited to dine with an Eastern Indian king. After the meal, the king asked her, all the other monks have recited scriptures to me, so why have you alone not recited any? Hanyatara replied, In my humble way, what I breathe out does not conform itself to external conditions and events. And what I breathe in does not take up residence in the realm of my skandhas, in the realm of eyes, ears, nose, body, tongue, mind. So Hanyatara is talking about the absolute, of dwelling in the absolute, of being, not conforming itself to external conditions. So Hanyatara is dwelling in the unseen, dwelling in truth. And so the breath that I breathe in, what I breathe out, is completely the Dharma, she says. Completely the Dharma. No personal I involved, but just the Buddhadharma of the breath in and out. Does not get mixed up in life's circumstances. It is greater than that. The in-breath does not reside in the world of aggregates. It does not reside in the world of perceptions, formations, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind. So if breath is truly the Buddhadharma, if the breath is God beyond God, this is me talking, then it doesn't take residence in these complications that come out in the circumstances of our lives. So in the circumstances of what is happening in the White House, in Washington, or in various places around the world, the difficult things that are happening, our breath does not take place, does not take part in those circumstances. It resides in the Buddhadharma. And as our breath resides in the Buddhadharma, then we are continually advocating for a truth in our midst. We are living the Buddhadharma, responding to these things that are happening with the Buddhadharma. My response to some of the news of people in the news or worried about the news was that at this moment I have to withdraw from it because I have been too close to it and I feel I am losing my strength in the Buddhadharma when I pay too much attention to it. So I return to this talk to teach myself as a reminder that the breath we share is the Buddhadharma, that we all, right now, we are connected in the Buddhadharma by our breath. So Dogen Zenji, he goes on to explain, what the Venerable Hanyatara is now putting her full strength into saying is that not only does what she exhale not conform itself to external conditions, but external conditions do not conform themselves to what she exhales. So the condition has no effect upon the breath of the Absolute. Dogen again. Even though her breathing out was an external condition, it was not her conforming herself to external conditions. Even though she is breathing in and out, even though she is involved in this everyday life, still the breath does not conform to external conditions. Innumerable eons have come and gone, but people have not yet understood the ebb and flow of breathing in and breathing out. So when we are up against this contortions of circumstances that are coming at us, this is where we bring ourselves back. We bring ourselves back to the breath, recognizing that everything is the Buddhadharma and cannot be otherwise. And this is what we must claim today in the face of the difficulties. This is what we must stand for. And we must do it very strongly today because we have so much to stand almost against. No, I don't want to say it quite that way. I came across something this week, and I cannot find it again to be able to quote it, but that the Buddha said that if we have an irresponsible leader, it is our duty to move them out of the way. I never heard the Buddha say such a strong thing about that. But it's our duty to have that leader, to move that leader and have that leader step aside. It's improper for us to have a leader who would disorganize in such a way or would place us in danger. If anybody knows where the Buddha said that, please let me know. I read it this week and I cannot find it again, and I've been through mountains of emails to try and find it, because when I read it, I was so comforted by it. I mean, it's the truth. It's the truth. It's wrong. It's wrong for us to have this at our, as the head of our country. So we must stand very strongly in the Buddhadharma. So then, Dogen Zenji does point to, then it's me talking again. When we were talking yesterday, we had these various faith traditions represented, but our breath and the breath of the dying person is once again so genuine and so immediate for that person who is dying, is so essential, knowing that each breath may be the last one. And yet, as I pointed out, in the dying people that I have been with, feels transcend the religion. There may be prayers said around the deathbed, but the person transcends any doctrine, moves beyond any notion of the construct of doctrine or dogma. I mean, if I take in a breath, I don't stop and think, well, is this a Catholic breath I'm taking in? Is my exhalation a Buddhist breath? Is my inhalation Jewish or something? There's no such thing in our connectedness, in the real essence of life. So then Dogen points to what the Buddha says. And the Buddha says, from the winter solstice on, which we are coming up to, the days grow longer as the sun moves farther southward. From within my eye, a light pours forth, and into my nostrils pours the breath of life. Very beautiful statement. So, also, the words that come via our breath must also be very aware words. Breath comes in and we express something, and that something is the Buddhadharma coming out of us. So we must take great care about the words that ride along that air and how we use language and what we say in relationship to the difficulties around us. For it's also, it's our duty to stand, clearly in the Buddhadharma, stand clearly with the truth of our breath. So I offer that to you as something to think about if you happen to go home and read the news before you go to sleep tonight, or when you get up in the morning and you read the news. It's hard not to. One person, I came back and I said, look, I need to take a step back. I need to collect myself and not engage too deeply with the news for a little bit, because it's gotten too close to me and it's disturbing. And she responded. She says, yes, well, you're not paying attention. This terrible stuff is going on over here, and over here. As if my paying attention was going to change that. It's not going to. My paying attention to the news is not going to change the news unless I choose to go out and demonstrate and do something particular about it. But something particular is also standing in the Dharma. Something particular is to claim the Dharma with each breath and to claim the Absolute with each breath. And to know that we stand in that certainty and in that confidence that that which is unbalanced cannot succeed. The arc of justice, the arc of truth, is sometimes slow, but it does arc. But when we come over that arc, it is well for each one of us to know that that's where we stood. We didn't cave. We didn't succumb to ill will or to name calling. And I will do everything I can to find that quote. It was a good one, and it was the Buddha was so in earnest with this that it's wrong. And it's the same in Confucian teaching, that the ruler must be benevolent. We only succeed in our society when the ruler is benevolent, because that benevolence feeds then the mayor is benevolent, and then the parents are benevolent, and by that then the children are raised in a benevolent society, and they themselves become benevolent as they go forward. It's the only thing that makes sense. So anyway, maybe you have some thoughts.
I come back to a familiar problem, and every time I think I have it solved in some way, I don't. And that is, if everything is the Buddhadharma, then how are these difficulties the Buddhadharma? How?
You know they are teaching us, are they not? Isn't it the occasion of our having to practice so hard to stand in truth?
But as the breath is the Buddhadharma.
Every breath. Difficulties are the opportunity. And as we know that we don't have awakening without great difficulties.
Yeah.
So what an awakening we are in for.
So these things, these unjust things that are being done, or I'll just leave it at that. That is teaching us as well.
Yes. As difficult as that is to see. But when we see those difficulties, we have to stand in truth. And that is such an opportunity for hard practice. To stand against those claims. And to see the truth wherever we see those difficulties. Those people who are being mistreated are the Buddha, the Buddhadharma. The people who are causing the atrocities are ultimately the Buddhadharma, but they're just kind of on a lower scale, a lower learning curve. Yeah.
If the Dharma is the reality of the teaching, then part of that reality is great ignorance and ill will.
Yes, it is.
And what you're, I think, telling us is that we need to stand before that, see it for what it is and not become it.
Correct. That's right.
And that's not easy.
No, it isn't. But as you practice the breath, as you practice just that one little practice of remembering, oh, my in-breath is the Buddhadharma, my out-breath is the Buddhadharma. Well, that in-breath came to this body, keeps this body alive. This body is the Buddhadharma. As we do that, as we do that in an aware way, we become stronger in the sense of standing presently and being present to it and not being tricked into entering the horror of it. So that's what I mean when we are called on to a strong practice of remembering. Remembering, you don't have to count breaths or do anything like that. 10 times a day. This breath that I'm taking in now, or go up the stairs, you get a little bit of out of breath. Notice your breath. Oh, that's the Buddhadharma.
Over the weekend, there were 4 days where I didn't listen to the news.
Oh, good for you.
And Monday morning, I'm trying to point to the transition because my emotional state shifts. I mean, within a day of driving to work and coming back and listening to the radio, I'm in a completely different frame of mind, emotional, all of it together. Sure. And I'm trying to get back to standing before it without
getting sucked
in. And that's what I feel like.
Sure.
That transition each weekend, I have a respite. I start Monday, and then I'm back into it again. I don't have a good...
If, as Buddhist practitioners, if we choose to listen to the news, we must practice in the face of that news. We must practice when we are listening to the news and see all of that as the Buddha. We have to see the truth of that when we listen to the news. That's how it has to be as a Buddhist practitioner. We cannot be sucked into it. We must stand very, very strongly and understand, the truth of the situation. That's not really who those ugly people are. We have to see the Buddhadharma wherever we go. So if you opt for the news, I don't say don't listen to the news, because I do. And as I say, I had to back off right today because it's just a little bit too much. Because that, little by little, back off and regain your composure. And then if I choose to listen in a few days, have to listen from a place of practice.
Say the last again, please.
Listen from a place of practice. Yeah. So that's why we have to be so strong today, because it takes a great deal of strength to also stand in practice and listen to so much garbage, And then we should be discerning about what garbage we listen to, which garbage, which narration of the garbage we choose to listen to. And that's very difficult today because the news mostly has become an entertainment. Even the great stations, even BBC, even NPR, PBS, they've gone for a certain level of entertainment value. So it's we have to see through that, and we have to stand with the truth of practice in what we are hearing. If somebody came into this room, full of anger and spewing and so forth and so on, we'd sort of be taken back. But I hope that we wouldn't be taken in by that person's anger. We would just look and say, okay, that's not the truth of that person. It's not who that person really, really is. It's just this, it's monkey mind. And people are operating from monkey mind, particularly from the White House. And that's not our practice.
I'm reminded, I went to an event once with Bernie Glassman, and it was right around the time, I think, of Bush's re-election. And it was probably like in October or something. And so there were a lot of strong feelings up around politics. And he had us do a little meditation where we thought about people on the other side and sent them goodwill and sent them love. And it was kind of mind-blowing in a certain way.
Yes.
It never occurred to me to practice in that way. And, it always reminds me that there is that opportunity to keep our hearts open in the face of delusion and, maybe even hatred on the other side.
Yes.
That we can't, for me, my practice is to try to keep my heart open.
Right.
And to try to love. It's like the Buddha said in the Dhammapada that hate never overcomes hate, only love can overcome hate.
Right.
So I think that's...
Thank you. Yeah. We've just finished a long period of practice, months of practice, of intense chanting of the Heart Sutra. And for me, I don't know why, but I was kneeling on the White House lawn chanting, and it just came to me every single time I chanted. And so, for the sake of the country, that's where I was with it. And so, so it didn't have any, I didn't have any ill will around it at all. Obviously, chanting the Heart Sutra, and yet it's difficult. But that's an essential practice to that's Lojong practice, right? Inhale the suffering and you exhale love into the world. That's essentially what that in-breath and out-breath is too, with Hanyatara's teaching. The in-breath and the out-breath is the Buddhadharma. And just that's the Buddhadharma. So, yeah.
Years ago, I read a sentence in a book somewhere, and it said, "Breathe to the hole in the heart." Years ago, and I've all thought about that often. And when I go for a walk, I do practice that, and I walk every day if the weather is appropriate. But it seems to work. It calms you down, and you pay attention to what's going on around you rather than out there.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So we've big work right now. Big work. Committing to practice. Recommitting to practice. We're coming up now. I thought that this was also a good topic in relationship to coming up to Rohatsu, starting next Tuesday evening, and which we really engage, not with the technique of breathing on the cushion with Shikantaza, but because we are together and all breathing in and out the Buddhadharma, we come and strengthen our practice and renew ourselves in our sitting, in our strong sitting together. So I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to the restoration of it and good practice. So okay, thank you everybody.